Welcome, everyone, to the homage for Dr. Linda James Myers. This is an honor to actually present her today and honor her in such a way in the work that she's done for more than, I don't know, 50 years. Uh, and it's been some amazing work. My name is Dr. Sharon Tediga. I'm the director of the Center for Black Studies Research at the University of California, Santa Barbara. And I'd like to begin with introducing our panel today. Our first panelist I'd like to introduce is Dr. Dieterville. She's a co-founder of Sankofa Cultural Institute and core faculty at the California Institute of Integral Studies. She holds a Doctor of Philosophy and Transformational Studies from the CIIS Institute and a master's degree in Transpersonal Studies from the Institute of Transpersonal Psychology from Sophia University. Dr. Dieterville's dissertation, Sankofa Praxis, an Afrocentric meta-theory of Sankofa, and Jengship as in reclamation of Afrocentric episteme, psychology, spiritness, and personhood. A scholarly personal narrative of cultural retrieval, alignment, and actualization is the framework that guides her work. Sankofa Praxis is a transformational meta theory which integrates the concept of Sankofa, a cultural concept used to guide African ascendant people in cultural reclamation. Genakship, which I define as relationally, intentionally guided development and Afrocentric episteme, psychology, spiritness, and personhood. Now, I'm not so sure if I pronounced that correctly, but I will allow her to correct me whenever she feels like it. The next panelist is Dr. Zetu. She has a PhD in psychology and currently works as an associate professor in the Department of Psychology at the University of South Africa. Her focus areas are African Black psychology, African epistemologies, and use of indigenous African languages for their epistemic value. She uses indigenous African languages to excavate African theorizations about the meaning of being human in the world to people of African descent world over. The use of indigenous African languages also allows her to dispel colonial myths and falsehoods about Africanness. She has published on the need to center African knowledge in higher education curriculum with titles on the spiritual meaning of what it is known today as bride price, the cultural embeddedness of African psychology, and the spiritness of African knowledge. In her work, she also uses metamorphic language as a reliable site of African epistemology. Our next panelist is Dr. Queener Jr. He obtained his BA from the College of Worcester, Maine, from the Ohio State University, and received his PhD in counseling psychology from the University of Akron. He is a professor and teaches graduate courses in the counseling psychology program at the University of Akron. He writes and publishes research in the areas of multicultural issues, culturally specific interventions, retention, and African American males. He currently serves as the executive director for the Minority Behavioral Health Group, a nonprofit organization founded to reduce the mental health disparities for African Americans and other underserved populations. He is married to Charlene Queener, and they have 4 children, Malik, Aisha, and twins Jelani and Jabari, and then 3 grandchildren. Our next panelist is Dr. Spite. She is a professor of psychology and director of clinical training for the counseling psychology doctoral program at the University of Akron in Akron, Ohio. She joined the faculty at the University of Akron in 2008 after several years at Loyola University in Chicago. She received her PhD in counseling psychology from the Ohio State University in 1990. Dr. Spite is a fellow of Division 17, Society for Counseling Psychology of the American Psychological Association. She was recognized in 2019 as a distinguished psychologist by the Association of Black Psychologists. Her research and scholarly interests include the psychological effects of oppression, mental health of African American women, African-centered psychology, cultural competence, and social justice in psychology. And our final panelist is Dr. Haggins. She is an African-centered psychologist who works as a community healer consultant, and professor. She is the founder and president of the Safe Black Space, a developing nonprofit focused on healing racial trauma and enhancing Black wellness. Dr. Haggins is an associate professor in the College of Psychology at California Northridge State University and is on the board of directors for the California's Black Health Network. She is a member of the Association of Black Psychologists and a trainer of the Emotional Emancipation Circles. Dr. Haggins received her PhD in counseling from The Ohio State University, and in 2016, she received a Community Healer Collaborator Award from the Community Healing Network. I want to welcome all of our panelists, and Dr. Haggins will introduce our esteemed guest tonight. And thank you very much for everyone joining us. And again, I appreciate you being here. And again, thank you.
Thank you so much for the introductions. I am honored to be a part of this panel and be a part of this celebration tonight. To honor Dr. Linda James Myers. She is an internationally recognized thought leader. She is an author. She's a scholar, a pioneer, and a trailblazer in African-centered psychology. I am going to tell you a little bit more about her, but I'm going to start by sharing some of my experience of her spirit and her essence, because as we know in African-centered psychology, we're spirit beings showing up in these material ways. And so I want to honor her spirit part before we talk about what she's materialized in such amazing ways. And so I want to start first by saying what a wonderful celebration of her scholarship, her work, and her life. Right, and you may relate to this analogy. You remember when you were a kid and like a little one, and you went to a birthday party, or maybe it was your sibling's birthday party, and it wasn't yours, but you loved that person so much, you were so excited, you were like, I can't wait to go to the party, or I can't wait to. You wanted to maybe sit next to the person when they were blowing out the candles, or when they were opening up their cake, their presents, excuse me, because maybe you'd get some more cake, or you'd get to play with that toy or whatever. And that's the energy I think I'm experiencing around being here tonight with Dr. Myers, this idea of being able to pick up on all of her glow, all of the ways in which she has shined and shows up in the world, and wanting to sit next to her at her party. And so I'm honored to be at this party celebrating her. And I have known Dr. Myers for a really long time, since 1989, when I showed up as a student at The Ohio State University. And I remember meeting her and learning more about her theory and her work, and just sitting in her class and in her presence and being like, I want to be like her when I grow up, right? Just feeling this essence of she lives optimal theory. She is who she says she is. She walks the talk. She walks the talk. And so I hope at some point, feel like I'm moving in that direction, but I hope at some point to be able to continue to be more and more like her. And so it is in that spirit that I want to honor Nana Linda, Mama Linda, our Queen Mother this evening, and share a little bit more with you about who she is, what she's done, where she's come from. And then you'll hear from each of our panelists as well about their experiences with her and her scholarship. But let me just say, first of all, her vita is really long. And so it's a good, 30 something pages. And so as I looked to print and to review, it reminded me some 30 something years later, like, of her, how amazing she is and all that she's done for a really long time. So let me highlight a few things for you about Nana Linda. She has over 70 publications, references, books, articles, things that she has written that she has put out into the world. And she's been doing that since 1977, I think was the first publication on her Vita. So it's been a long road for her. Some of her seminal works, and I'm going to do a little show and tell. Understanding, right, an African-centered, Afrocentric worldview. Don't let me get it wrong, right? But if you have not read this, this is the starting place, I think, well, at least for me, in terms of my exposure to her work, which is really grounded in the wisdom tradition of African deep thought. And so in this book, she begins to really explain for all of us a way of understanding optimal conceptual theory and helping us to begin to understand more about the higher stages of human development and how we can achieve them, particularly in times like this, but understanding the roots of racism and sexism and classism and all of the isms, right? And understanding how we can begin to heal from them through belief systems analysis, right? Which is the application, it's the therapeutic approach, it's the tool that we use to really move through and shift our consciousness. I will allow her to fill us in because she will present some information as well. But that's some of the roots. What are some of her other publications or books, at least I have to show and tell? Our Health Matters, right? So this particular text is around a guide to African and Indigenous American psychology and a cultural model for creating climate change and a culture of change with community health, right? So she's working all these different levels, how we change ourselves, how we change systems and communities. And this is one of my favorites, Beat Up, Tore Up, because I've had it for years, but Blessed Assurance, right? So deep thought meditations based in the African tradition and wisdom of our ancestors. So just a sampling of some of her major books, but let me also cite some of her other works. She has been cited in multiple journals, a Journal of Black Psychology, Handbook of Tests and Measurements for Black Populations with R.L. Jones. She supported my dissertation and we had that published in the African American Identity Development book based in, again, R.L. Jones' work years ago. She has done work on the deep structure of culture and published, again, in Africa World Press, so all over. I also want to mention some of her, so that's just what she's written, published, right? But she presents internationally on all kinds of topics, so a few highlights. These are some, as I was reading her 33-page vita, I was like, oh, I would love to have gone to that or that, but some things that she's done. Clarifying the muddy waters as we tread, and an invited address at the 33rd International Black Women's Congress. She has done, this one I really like the title. It was called Faith of Our Fathers and Sons. The remix, Save Us from Epistemic, I might be saying that wrong, violence and grant us sustainable well-being. And it was an invited address and it was titled, We Gon' Be All Right, right? You guys know that song, We Gon' Be All Right. So it was a symposium on Black men, crisis, and grace. So her work is phenomenal. It stretches across multiple planes and planets. She's written grants, I think I noted over 20 grants totaling a little under $1 million. And she is someone who has retired from her role at The Ohio State University and yet continues to serve in so many different ways. She has multiple honors and I have to cite some of them because she's incredible and I'd be remiss if I did not at least mention a few of them. But she received the Mary McLeod Bethune Carter G. Woodson Award for Outstanding Contributions in the Development and Promotion of Black Studies from the National Council on Black Studies. She is a Fulbright Scholar awardee. She is a recipient of the National Congress of Black Women Sojourner Truth Award. Come on now, y'all. And just one more. She received the Outstanding Pioneer in African American Mental Health by the Mental Health Association of America. So it is a great honor to have studied with, sat with, consider a friend, Nana Linda. And I so look forward to hearing what you are going to share with us this evening and what you will continue to bring to our planet and to our world as we grow and learn and move into our optimal way of being in the world. So, Ashe. Now that we know more and more about Dr. Linda Myers in anticipation of hearing her speak, we are now going to hear from some of our panelists. And I want to remind you, you're welcome to respond to things in the chat. But if you have questions that are coming up that you want to pose to any of the panelists or to Dr. Myers a little later in the program, be sure to enter those in the Q&A section, okay? All right, and with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Detterville and invite you to share what you would like about Nana Linda.
Beautiful, thank you. I am starting my timer, so I'm going to do my best to stay within my time. So, hi, Dr. Myers. I'm so thrilled to be here and to be looking at your beautiful, beautiful face. I always say whenever we're in the space together that I just love looking at you, and it is so true. I came to know your work when I was in my early 20s, in the in the late 80s. It was just about 1989 for me as well. And I came to AB-Sci at that time through the San Diego Community College District. And I was just coming off of a divorce and postpartum depression and a suicide attempt, and was just really lost in the world and really confused and didn't know anything. And so I came to San Diego Community College to their Black Studies program. And that's where I was introduced to the Association of Black Psychologists through Dr. Judy Sondeo and many others, Carol Wayman and many others. And it's through that process that I came to your book in the early 90s, the book that we've shown earlier. And one of the things that I love about this book is not only how this was my Bible that got my head right, and this is how I understand the world. Like, I literally understand the world. I understand how to be alive, how to be a human. Like, I always say AB-Sci saved my life. And you are one of those people within AB-Sci that literally saved my life. And one of the things that I love about this book is not only what's on the inside, but what's on the back side is this beautiful picture of you. And every time I look at this, I love I'm going to put it up to the camera so folks can really take a look at it. I love the strength that you just, it just is radiating out. And anytime I want to tap into that strength, I just look at that picture. It is like, you know how people have religious figures and they hope that picture, that's the picture. And one of the things that I love about it is that you would think that that person would be harsh, right? If someone saw this photo and they didn't understand what was in the book, they didn't understand the message that was coming forward, they would think, oh, this is a radical, this is a revolutionary. And all of that is true, but there is a gentleness, there is a sweetness, there is a kindness, there is a nurturing, loving cadence to how you speak and to how you bring forward your message. And so I look to that photo and I look to you. That's why I always say I just love looking at you because it energizes me. It reminds me of the potential of who I am. And it is a beacon to keep me moving forward in the work that I'm doing. And when many years later, I didn't go to school full time until I was almost 50. And so between 20 something and almost 50, I worked in the world. But AB-Sci was always there. I read your book and many others, Dr. Noble's and many others. And so I lived my life as an African-centered person. And so my only way of understanding how to be in the world is to be optimal and not suboptimal, because that's all that I knew. And so for me, who you are in your work is lived. It's not just something that I do in a classroom or in any of those settings. That didn't come till like almost 30 years later. And so in 2010, I finally said, I'm going to walk away from everything. I'm almost 50. I want to get these degrees. Everybody I knew had PhDs, like literally, like the majority of the people that I knew and socialized with had PhDs because I hung out with AB Sci. And so I was like, okay, if I'm going to do this thing, and folks would get so frustrated with me because like, you don't have a degree. I was like, no. So finally, I said, let me go ahead and do this thing. So I walked away from all of my career and everything that I had in the nonprofit sector. And I came back to school. I did my bachelor's degree at CIIS. And all along, I knew that optimal psychology and the work of Dr. Myers was going to play a central role in that. And then when I was continuing on, and I knew that the BA was just to get to the PhD, that I didn't know how I wanted to organize it and what would be the central thing that I would pursue within that. And I was talking to a colleague, Angelina Graham, and she was at the Institute of Transpersonal Psychology. And I says, oh, transpersonal psychology. Yes, I read about that. That might be it. And so, and that's how I really, really came more deeply connected to your work, was through finding that as sort of the anchor. And so again, my understanding, we're gonna do a show and tell. I know we all got books right here. My understanding of what transpersonal psychology is came from this book. And I actually had come across this book years before I went back to school to get all of these letters and what have you. So again, I knew this text and I read this just as a person out in the world, just living life, right? And so when I came into transpersonal psychology and I'm listening to Stan Groff and all of whatever he does and all of these things, I'm just like, no, because I understood what transpersonal psychology was. And I remember I called you up and I said, Dr. Myers, I'm going to do my master's degree in transpersonal psychology. Do you have any advice? And you definitely gave me some advice. And Angelina and I, at that time, were both Western graduate reps for AB Sci, for the Student Circle. And we invited you to our Western Region Conference at San Francisco State. I was not in support of inviting the other guest that was there. And but he was invited and spoke nonetheless, so Stan Groff. And I recorded on my phone, and you all can find it on YouTube if you ever want to watch it, Dr. Myers speaking at that conference. And she, again, that grace, she brought the fire. He's sitting right there, like not even 3 feet in front of her. And she brought the heat and was clear, but in such a beautiful, radiant, optimal, like Dr. Higgins was saying, she lives optimal psychology. Yeah. So she brought it and said, you know, what it is. And just
my sister.
Yes, I'm sorry. Oh, my timer went off.
Yes, my friend. So
okay. I'm going to wrap it up here. So that's how I came to transpersonal psychology. Then I did my dissertation. Her work is centered to my dissertation. And I wrote an article on the African-centered transpersonal self. And I referenced her and all of that kind of stuff in it. And then she referenced me in one of her articles. And it's just like, I feel like I'm 5, like Christy was saying at the beginning. And just is such a joy. So forgive me for going over because I got caught up. And I appreciate you and I love you so, so, so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Detterville. And no worries going over. Just be aware, panelists, I may hop in, no disrespect, because I know we have so much to share and that we would love to say, but we also want to make sure we have some space so that we can hear from our honored guests. So thank you so much, Detterville. I connected with a lot of what you shared. All right, well, we have our next panelist, Dr. Zetu. So if you're able to come off screen, I know you are also connected, I think, by phone. We are ready to hear from you.
Thank you. Thank you. I hope you can hear me. Sanibonani. Good evening, everybody. It's actually very early morning in South Africa. It's the ancestral hour. Sorry. So in order to keep to time, I hope you can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you just fine.
All right. So in order to keep to time, I have just written down my notes, everything I want to say about Mama Linda. So I wish to first express my sincere gratitude for this honor to pay homage to Mama Linda tonight. I am joining you from South Africa. I'm trying to fix my camera so that you can see me. I'm joining from South Africa, and therefore I engage with Mama Linda's work as a South African. And hers is one of those works that make me not to feel alienated from myself. To us, people of African descent, that is the whole point of education. Education ought to help you build from what you bring and not to distance you from your world of origin. When I agreed to come to speak on this occasion tonight, I was immediately taken to an isiXhosa saying, isiXhosa being my home language, expressed in moments of great pride, which reads as follows: Amaqobokazana ngalala endleleni yazini kunyembelekile. This is often said by our mothers who sing it in jubilation, and it translates as young women entrusted with a task, difficult as might be, will stop at nothing to see it through successfully. But it is the literal translation of this saying that lends easy comprehension, which is when daughters do not return from an errand, you must know that something has gone wrong. This communicates a message of faith in daughters to do exactly what they were sent to do. They are trusted to take assignments seriously, not because they are submissive, but because they are diligent and they have stewardship. They are not just diligent with mortal assignments, but we are told in our culture that our forebears also trust daughters with spiritual assignments too. My elders in South Africa say this is because our ancestors know that daughters will not be egotistic about knowledge. I have witnessed this in fictional writings of amaXhosa, depicting how we lived in the olden days. It is in many instances women who are consulted for wisdom. Mama Linda has been that daughter to African psychology, the daughter who always returned home with an executed errand. We stand tall today on pages of her assignments, diligently executed. Uliqobokazana elingalalanga endleleni. She came home with an executed task. Expanding on how amaXhosa look at women, I wish to bring the expression umfazi obelede, meaning a nursing mom with far-reaching breasts that feed entire nation. They see women as nourishers of nations. We have fed from Mama Linda's breast from afar. Her work on optimal theory is far-reaching, with extended application to various communities of African people. It is the kind of work which helps us, especially here in South Africa, to explain our indigenous concepts that emerge from relational ontology. The relations between the individual, family, community are rooted in African understanding of human being, a spiritual being. Mama Linda is in harmony with many African cultures when she argues that Africans assume an extended sense of self which transcends time to include all ancestors, the yet to be born, nature, the community. The well-being of an individual is thus tied to the well-being of these interconnected entities. Among Africans, there is no separation between the physical and the spiritual forms of being. The Western world's separation of body and spirit, as captured by Mama Linda, assumes that the various segments of being human could be observed individually. In contrast, as Mama Linda states, the African approach has a holistic orientation which is foregrounded in interconnectedness and interdependence of all things. Within this conception, highest value is placed on interpersonal relationships between individuals. This therefore means that one's status as a human being, your very existence, is earned through being divine or being good to those around you. The relationship with nature and the ancestors is inseparable, as connecting with the ancestors demands the well-being of the land. The health of the plants, animals, soil, and the water is necessary for one to perform rituals that connect one with ancestors. Through rituals, families have a primary responsibility to ensure clear communication paths between kinship and its ancestors. This begins at birth through early life rituals such as naming, and each important stage of a child's life is marked. Oh, 1 minute. Okay. By doing that, I was trying to say Mama Linda's work is very much congruent with how we know ourselves. Also, it has made me feel that we truly are a people who spoke with stars before they were sold astrology. As the South African poet Vangi Ganjo says, I am tempted to label Mama Linda as a theorist, a teacher, and a healer. But in my culture, that would be an oxymoron because Mama is all of those things in one. So Mama Linda, we will not say thank you to you tonight, but we will say Nangam. So meaning that may tomorrow bear witness to more of your good works. May you not tire to being Umama, the daughter who came entrusted with immortal errands, and the daughter who executed those errands diligently. Nangam so much.
That was absolutely beautiful. I love the daughter that has returned and the idea of the stars and all that you shared. Thank you so much. What a beautiful blessing. It just keeps getting better and better and better, right? All right, well, who's next? Let us hear from Dr. John Queener.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening, Dr. Myers. When they told me I had 8 to 10 minutes to talk about Dr. Myers, I was like, they got to be kidding. But I'm going to try to do so anyways. There are about 5 things I'm going to try to say. I'm not good at timekeeping, and so y'all gonna have to help me out. In fact, when I teach class, I usually have a student let me know when class.
I'm here, my brother. I got you.
All right, thank you very much. Let me start with my beginning with Dr. Myers. I was an undergrad, and I was part of an organization called Harambe, and we were a group of men from Black men and men who have African ancestry, who would do programming related to culture, related to politics, and related to social ideas on campus. And so one semester we brought in Dr. Myers, and it was the end of the semester, and it was kind of warm, and a lot of us had spring fever. However, we all turned out for Dr. Myers' presentation, and that was my introduction to optimal psychology. And I had taken a course on Black psychology, and there was a lot of pieces that fit for me. And it reminded me of when I'm in the kitchen and I'm trying to cook something and I taste it and I'm like, that's not quite it. And I put something else in it and I taste it and that's not quite it. But then when I heard Dr. Myers speak about optimal psychology, I said, that's the flavor I've been looking for. And ever since then, optimal psychology has resonated with me. And so when the book came out, Introduction, Understanding the Afrocentric World, Introduction to Optimal Psychology, that had a major impact on me professionally and personally. And so I can't hold my copy of that book up because at MBHG, I encourage people to read. And every time that book appears on my bookshelf, it then disappears again. I have an idea who has it, and I'm not going to call out their name to protect the guilty, but I can't keep that book on my bookshelf. But it had a major impact on me professionally. It had a major impact on me personally. And so the third thing was, I had an opportunity to start a mental health center for Black folks. And I said to myself, and I said to others, we cannot imitate white mental health systems for Black folk. If we're going to start a Black mental health center, it has to be Black inside and out. And so I said, what's the best way for us to communicate how Black we are in a psychotherapy that's grounded in African philosophy? And so I began to talk about Dr. Myers' book and Dr. Myers' optimal psychology and suboptimal theory. And we began to develop a mental health system from the ground up with optimal psychology being the framework for everything we do. So when we do individual theory, optimal psychology. When we do group therapy, optimal psychology. When we do workshops, optimal psychology. I even run a diabetes prevention program, and I do what? Optimal psychology. And I never thought I'd put diabetes with optimal psychology, but I found a way to do it. And so Dr. Myers, every therapist, every case manager, every prevention specialist that comes through our space is integrated into understanding optimal psychology. And that's important because it requires them to internalize it, which then leads them to their own healing. Because I always say it's hard for you to take your clients where you have not been. So if you haven't healed some things in your life, then it's hard for you to heal your client. So your influence is through all the hundreds of therapists and case managers that have gone through Minority Behavioral Health Group. In addition, and probably more important, your theory has helped heal thousands of clients who have come through Minority Behavioral Health Group. So when you look at yourself in the mirror, I want you to remind yourself that your theory has helped healing, especially with people who need it the most. And so that has been something that I will always carry with me. The fourth thing I want to say is we have been so helpful in healing Black folks that others want to know how they can be trained in optimal psychology. And to your credit, what you say is, well, you need to talk to those folks in Akron, Ohio. And most people don't even know how to pronounce Akron, let alone know where it is. So I just say it's where LeBron James came from. So now, with your assistance, as you know, we plan to launch in January the Belief Systems Analysis Institute, where the main goal of the Institute is to train nationwide, in fact, internationally, people in optimal psychology and belief systems analysis. So we thank you for blessing us with that theory and blessing us with the work where we can provide healing via your scholarship. Finally, what I like to say is, I've met many scholars in psychology and other disciplines, and I've read their work, and then I have an opportunity to meet them. And sometimes when you meet them, you say, that person can write about Black psychology, but that person not living Black psychology. But when I meet you, since I met you back in undergrad till today, I can truly say, not only do you talk the talk, you walk the walk. And one of the things I like best about you, and I'm trying to be like this myself, I don't know if I'm there yet, is that you have a way of confronting white supremacy in a way that they don't know they've been confronted until they think about what you said. And I don't have that type of control yet, but someday I hope I'll be able to confront white supremacy in a way they don't know they've been confronted. And so I appreciate everything about you, and I especially appreciate your spirit, and I especially appreciate your willingness to share your scholarship with us, and I especially appreciate your willingness, even after you retire, to spend time with MBHG and help us continue to develop an optimal theory and optimal psychology. Thank you, thank you, thank you. On behalf of all of us at MBHG and all of our clients who have been healed through your work, thank you. How do I do the time?
You did amazing. You had 50 seconds left. Look at that. Anything you want
All
to
right.
go
I'm
with?
proud of myself, y'all.
I'm proud of you too. I'm proud of you too. And all of the work that you're doing, Dr. Cleaner, in Akron, Ohio, and the thousands of lives that have been touched by belief system analysis and Linda's work, and the thousands more that will learn, well, many more than thousands, right? With the Institute now being launched in January. What a blessing. I can't wait to check it out. So thank you so much. All right, our last panelist. I want to invite my previous colleague and classmate, and now sister friend, Dr. Suzette Spite, to share.
Thank you, and good evening, everyone. Please forgive my voice. It's weak, but even if you have to strain to hear me, hopefully I'm going to say something worth hearing. I'm so happy to be able to talk about Dr. Myers. I'll give you my last line first. She's everything. Now I'll break it down, but I mean, she gives us life. She gives us life. She's everything. So I want to talk about at least two things here: her impact on the field of Black psychology and her impact on the field of the other type of psychology. You know, Mama Dr. Myers is a woman of African descent in a time and a place where Black femaleness has not been appreciated. Specifically, her perspective on the world as a Black woman has not been welcomed in white spaces and, truth be told, in many Black spaces. I witnessed Dr. Myers being snubbed, being disrespected, overlooked, overtalked, disregarded many, many times in many different arenas. Because like Dr. Christie said, I was one of those people sitting next to her at her birthday party, right? And so I would see what was coming towards her. Dr. Myers handles these incidents with grace, always. Sometimes she speaks out, speaks up. Sometimes she saves her responses till later. But trust me, she is always aware of what's happening and sometimes pointed out things that I didn't notice. But at the same token, Dr. Myers is very serious about peace. She means it when she says it. And she's committed to maintaining her peace even when chaos is going on around her. She knows that in the end, her scholarship wins. Knowledge prevails because self-knowledge is the ultimate prize. So she doesn't have to confront and fight and have conflict with folks who aren't ready to hear the message. She used to always tell me it's not for everybody. I couldn't understand that. I was like, what do you mean it's not for everybody? She said, everybody's not going to get it. And they're not supposed to. I still don't quite get that, but I'm working with it. I guess I want to say that it hasn't been easy fighting this uphill battle for Dr. Myers, at least from what I've seen on the outside. I mean, there was a time, and I'm probably telling a tale out of school, and my mother probably wouldn't like this, but I remember that when she was going up for promotion, right, that she had a home department and an affiliated departments. The affiliated departments were in support of her promotion. The home department was not. Yeah, Black femaleness in a time when neither is valued. That's what that is. So she brought a new perspective to Africana psychology, talking about the deep structure of culture, not just constructs, but the roots. And she's explaining the foundation, how we know. What do we value? How do we know what we know? So this is about worldview and trying to figure out how can one group of people dehumanize and exploit another group of people. So she says it's the conceptual system. It's and that's what we have to look at. And if you adhere to the suboptimal conceptual system, there are predictable outcomes. But we can avoid that if we adhere to an optimal system. But what's important here is that she opened it all up. She opened it all up for all of us. She broke it down. She opened it up. If you ask her, she'll talk to you about the divine feminine, that it's our time. So nurturing, devotion, compassion, loving, intuition, reflective energy. These are things that are our time. This is what the divine feminine brings. Dr. Myers was intersectional before it became popular. In fact, she was intersectional before it was a word. She's always been a Black woman, looking out for other Black women. And when I thought about that, it reminded me of Prince. Because Prince, for whatever he was always, well, he was always Black. But she's always been for other Black women, shepherding, mentoring, giving a smile, a word of support, a push, a hug, some advice. In terms of the larger field of psychology, she really has shown us what is possible, what psychology could be, maybe what it should be. She shakes the cobwebs. She shook the cobwebs to wake us up, Now, I don't mean woke, I mean awake, reawakened to the truth, to the falsehoods, and to the real possibilities. What is a psychology that's the psychology of the soul? That's a challenging question and an important one. She's a philosopher in psychologist clothing. She's a poet with a question. How could this have happened? How could oppression happen? She's a psychologist with an answer. It's your faulty conceptual way of thinking. And a philosopher with an alternative. Try this instead. In fact, there's history on the side of the quote alternative because it's actually the original. Her work makes us think differently about ourselves and our field. What should a psychology of the soul really look like? What is it that we're believing? Are we stuck in either or thinking? Are we judging based on external markers? Is our self-worth based on external criteria? Are we separating ourselves from the creator? Our work should serve a higher purpose. And these practical questions help us to take optimal conceptual theory, which is philosophical, and make it applied and practical, as Dr. Queener has just talked about. It's a reconceptualization of psychology and psychologists. It challenges, Dr. Myers, and optimal theory challenges our work and our sense of self. We're challenged to ask questions as researchers that matter to the community, not just to our quest for tenure. I mean, tenure is great, but if it doesn't help somebody, what was the point? As clinicians, we're challenged to help our clients expel the toxicity of internalized oppression while reclaiming and remembering the values and traditions of our elders and ancestors. As teachers, we're challenged to tell the truth, regardless of other people's fears and fragility. So optimal theory gives us balance. Dr. Myers gives us wholeness. And like I said at the beginning, which is my ending, she gives us life. Literally, literally, she's giving us life. I have two quotes that I like and I think are relevant, and now I'm done, Dr. Christie. There's my timer. A bird does not sing because it has an answer. It sings because it has a song. That's commonly attributed to Maya Angelou. I think Dr. Myers has a song. Kwame Nkrumah said, I'm not African because I was born in Africa, but because Africa was born in me. That's my tribute to Dr. Myers.
How beautiful.
That's gorgeous.
A beautiful song to sing. I wanted to just acknowledge some of the things that you said that touched me, Suzette. I'm sure many others. Just she is everything. I'm like, yeah, that's it. That's it. You captured it just right there. And just wanting to just acknowledge that. Some other things around the divine feminine, that she opened it all up, right? This idea of balance and wholeness and life. And I'm like, yep, right? This idea of intersectionality that we were addressing that years ago. I'm like, that was my dissertation. Optimal theory applied to identity development, right? And so it's amazing to think of all the work that she has done. I wanted to see if y'all are noticing some themes, right, from the panelists or those of us who have spoken, or things that you're seeing in the chat. I am. I'm going to read off a few things, and then I'm going to turn it over to Nana Linda so that she can respond to all that she has heard or share whatever is on her heart. But let me highlight some things. My glasses on, but have you been reading them, Mama Linda? Have you been seeing what's in the chat? Right?
I have. Beautiful.
Right?
Yeah.
So you're always great with your words and your deeds, and you were doing 40 years prior work to positive psychology and the transpersonal movement. You're a poet with a question, a philosophy with an answer, right on. So many comments about what you have done. So without any further ado from me, let me turn it over to you.
Oh my goodness. This has been so beautiful. I could just float away. I may, so I'm holding on to my chair. So I won't do that. Words cannot express how joyous I am and how filled my heart is. My spirit is uplifted because I guess Zetu said it. I'm here representing. I'm here on a mission. And I've tried to fulfill that mission. And you all have said, sister, well done. And I'm just like, I love to dance. So I'm just doing my happy dance. It is so much a blessing because each of you in your own way has just been so special in my life. And so, as with all human relationships, they're always reciprocal. They're always reciprocal. And I have to say, as each of you have said in your own way, optimal psychology isn't a theory as much as it is a practice. So practicing or living my theory as my practice, I just am overjoyed that it has come through the way it has. And I'm also overjoyed because that lets me know my theory is doing what it's supposed to do, which is to uplift the fallen humanity and illuminate the soul. And there's so much that I had thought I'd talk about, but I won't talk about now because there's no need to. But I will say this. As far as we've come, this is just the beginning. Because you see that whole psychology of oppression process that I have talked about in the past, it's alive and well. And it's been so effective. There's been no need for the white supremacist patriarchy capitalist system to change it at all. And they haven't, as we know. All they've done is expand it. That's how effective it is. That system of getting people to believe their physical well-being and success is in their hands. Denial of access to truth in history and culture. School boards even trying to prevent the truth of history and culture from being taught. Our history and culture is negated, but humanity's history and culture is negated because what's unique about Black Africana studies is that without an Africological analysis of human behavior, you don't have a comprehensive understanding of human behavior, because you've got to go back to the beginnings of human culture and civilization, which we do in optimal psychology by going back to the earliest historical records. And you have to pay tribute to those non-immigrant Africans who were trafficked to the Americas and built the wealth of their captors and this nation, and come through 2.5 centuries of no human rights whatsoever. And then another 150 years of legal domestic terrorism. And then we finally come out of that leading this nation morally and spiritually. And now this past 50 years plus, we're faced once again with them trying to roll back all that our ancestors fought and sacrificed for. And my only concern is this: optimal psychology can lead us back to that transcendence that got us through that 2.5 centuries and that 150 years and the last 50 years. But others who sought to take control of the African mind now have taken control of every mind. They are not restricting it to Black. They want to control the thinking of all people. And so I think that as we have come to understand optimal psychology and belief systems analysis as a psychotherapeutic approach, psychoeducational process, the optimization process, the heart feather strategy, all those things we've created are needed now for the salvation of humanity, because the people in power, their suboptimal mindset has not changed. And they're committed to that same materialistic greed and desire for power over and control of they've always had. Except now, such a small elite so obviously controls the media, the educational system, political system, the legal system. I can't call it a justice system, the legal system. And everything's out of order. Racism, sexism, classism. I cannot believe they're trying to prevent women to have control of their own bodies. I mean, or classism is, again, off the hook. People really believe that all these external accoutrements make them better. We understand classism just like we understand sexism, like we understand racism, and the solution's going to be the same. But I'm just very much struck by the fact that until people begin to see how that whole psychology of oppression process is being replicated, now not just targeting people acknowledging African descent, but all people, we're going to be in trouble. For example, I'll give you a good example. That notion of denying us access to the truth. If I'm going to ask a question, which group of people are the most resistant? And which group of people is most resistant to getting vaccinations? Black people, the poorly educated, or PhDs? What's your guess? Who's showing the most resistance and reluctance to take the jab? Anybody want to take a guess? Unmute yourself.
So the participants will need to put it in the chat because they're not able to unmute themselves. If anybody want to chime in, they can do that. I'm seeing in the chat PhDs.
Yeah.
Votes for PhDs.
It is PhDs. How many times have you heard that on the news? That should be all over the news, because they don't want it on the news, because then you think, well, now why would PhDs be against it? Oh, they're the people whose life is built around doing research and trying to figure things out. So they don't want to take it. Maybe I better give more attention and thought. I'm not trying to be an anti-vaxxer or take a vaccination, but I'm simply trying to illustrate that that same system that was put in place to take control of the African mind is alive and well and is now taking control of the minds of all people, Black, white, whatever. And so now more than ever, we have to begin to think for ourselves and use the power we have, take our power back and begin to divine reality. Oh, did I say divine reality? Well, we need to divine reality so that we can be on track. So that's kind of what's been on my mind in light of the fact that you have already shared what optimal psychology is and belief systems analysis is, how essential it is for us to try to pull humanity back from falling over the cliff by following people who have never understood what it means to be human, never understood fully what it means to have humane values or moral and spiritual reasoning at a high enough level to see that it has to be inherently wrong to treat people as though they're chattel. That mindset that is so committed to lies and untruth. We even elected a president who said clearly, oh, the truth is arbitrary. It doesn't matter anymore. It doesn't matter if what I'm saying is true. It matters if I can get people to believe it. So the divine Black feminine has returned, because if you look around this nation, you see clearly it's Black women taking the lead for the most part, pushing ma'at, pushing truth and justice and righteousness. And that will continue to be so. But one of the things that I want us to really, really take to heart is that in the face of all this, fear not. Fear not. We have got this. We really do. I mean, if we came through chattel enslavement, we can certainly make it through this level of mental bondage. But it's going to take the work of each and every one of you. And I'm so happy you're doing it. Yay. That's so wonderful. Christy didn't mention it herself, but she just got a MacArthur grant, right? For her safe Black space that she developed in Sacramento. That was all over the news a few years ago, and now she's getting funding to make it even do much more than it's been able to. So as much as you all have lauded me, I'm equally proud of each and every one of you, because you're amazing. You're amazing. And you know, based on the theory of optimal psychology, none of this is coincidence, right? We all chose to be here at this time to do what we're doing for the greater good of the whole, the greater good of humanity. And so I just have to say I'm very honored and humbled that you did choose to come back at this time and do what you do, because as they said, you all are daughters and sons who've come back to fulfill a mission. And we're also very happy that you've done that, that you did. I have to say that one of the things I definitely want to speak to is how blessed I am. I think I lost you. Let's see. Can you see me?
We can still see you.
Oh, great. Because I can't see you. What the
Okay.
heck did I do? Oh, there you are. Okay. Let me get over here and see if I can. Ta-da, you're back. Technology and I don't always get along. But I want to give honor to my children, to my sons. Because as hard as I've worked getting this theory developed, getting it out, developing my career and developing professionally, they're the ones who probably have sacrificed the most in terms of time for Mama Linda. But you know, God is good because they are phenomenal men. They are just full of my energy and my spirit and my consciousness. So I'm saying all that to simply say, when you're on, how can I say it? When you're on track, even when you can't do all you would hope to do, if your intentions are good, that will be good. And so I have two wonderful sons, Ikenna Sekou, James Myers, and Ty Harrison, James Myers, and 6 wonderful grandchildren. And that's a blessing because that lets us know the generations will continue. The generations will continue. So I'm blessed to have them as my sons. And they say that they're blessed to have me as their mother. you know that mama guilt can kill you. I also want to say that my family who's on the call, I saw my sister and I saw a cousin. I want to say thank you so very much for joining in this conversation this evening. And rather than me spend time lecturing, because I think that's unnecessary, I'd rather spend this time with people asking questions. Your comments on the chat have just been amazing. And I am so filled with how gracious and wonderful you have been in sharing with us this evening, because I know a lot of things are going on that you could spend your time on. I think that the fact that you showed up is quite an honor and quite a blessing, because the thing that is probably most precious that we have is time. That's something we're not going to get any more of than we have, but we are promised in that wisdom tradition of African deep thought to have enough time to accomplish that which we were sent to do. So I am so very thankful for that truth and that knowledge. And there's so much that we could say in terms, or I could say, I guess I should put it that way, in terms of where optimal psychology is. Now we're just going forward. The ancestors are just dropping knowledge all over the place and uplifting us, and that divine feminine has returned quite a while ago, actually, but is elevating us. And as I've studied more in terms of classical African civilization, I see the role of some of my goddesses from the ancient times. I'd like to turn my phone off. Let's see if I can, there we go. So when we reflect back on the beginnings of human culture and civilization and the early embodiments of divine consciousness, and we look at the characteristics that these people had, we see those characteristics are still in us. And you see them manifesting in each and every one of you on this panel. And I have to say this, that the divine feminine isn't just for women. All of us in here, male and female, the divine feminine, because we're talking about spirit energy and we're talking about principles that manifest. So I'm going to stop now. Let's see, we have about 15 minutes, 14, and see if there are any questions. And
Yes. So let me invite first the panelists to unmute ourselves, because I know the attendees can. And can we just show Mama Linda some love? Can we just love up on her and say thank you so much? It's amazing. So thank you. I don't know, maybe I'm only hearing me, but I'm sure they're saying stuff too, right? So thank you for that. I also Also wanted to say that we have about 15 minutes left. And so the invitation is, if you have questions, there's two ways to do it. You can use the Q&A feature, right, that box, and you can type it in. But we also honor, right, that having the experience of being able to speak is really nice as well. And so if you prefer to ask to be unmuted, you can raise your hand. We'll take a look and see if anybody wants to, or I can't, someone, okay, how can we? Okay, I take it back. I can.
Dr. Christie,
Yeah.
I'm looking at the chat, and one question maybe to even get us started is, can you, you were starting to talk more about the divine feminine. Can you maybe start and just talk a little bit more about what that means and where that comes from and how it shows up?
In fact, I think it was Christy, somebody held up this book, except it was an older version, but this is Bruce Bynum's new version of the African Unconscious. It's called Our African Unconscious. And it's still about the Black origins of mysticism and psychology, but Bruce does a phenomenal job taking us back to the beginnings. And he talks about she who has no name. She who has no name. Before we get Set and Isis and Hathor and all of those goddesses, the Black woman, that feminine energy is the energy that is credited with first conceiving of the divine. It makes sense though, because if you are carrying life in your body and giving life through your body, you probably will develop some kind of awareness or appreciation of a connection to something greater than yourself. But it's not just being woman, but it's being, Zaitu actually talked about being a woman who is committed to nourishing all of humanity. That loving, nurturing, supporting, life-enhancing energy that is often referred to as the divine feminine because it's counterbalanced by the masculine. The suboptimal worldview that we talk about is coming from a white male patriarchal capitalist mindset, and the divine feminine is coming from the Black feminine, Black female mindset. Two different and divergent. So the return of the Black feminine speaks to the fact that that energy, that consciousness, that spirituality is returning to the planet to counterbalance and uplift and carry away those who are open and want to go. And when that happens, that which is not that will dissipate. One of the affirmations I got when I asked the ancestors about optimal psychology and where it fit within the wisdom tradition, after Malana Karanga had sent me a copy of his translation of the Yoruba sacred text, the Odu Ifa. And it opened to the 78th Odu, where the people are asking Oludumare, when can we rest in heaven? We're tired going back and forth. And Oludumare says, when all the good is found, when there's no more fear, no more anxiety, no more cheating, no more meanness, no more killing. When all the good is found, then we can rest in heaven, because this is supposed to be heaven. And we can make it heaven, because heaven is where the divine is. And if the divine is in you, then guess what? This is heaven. So anyway, that's a short version of the divine feminine and what that means. And I think that let that divine feminine with you bring you peace, and joy, and just rest in the everlasting arms of that great mother who just loves you so desperately and so deeply and never ever leaves you, could leave you, because there's nowhere to go. We are truly one, always, in all ways.
Yes, 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 yes. Thank you for that, Nana Linda. There are a number of questions that are coming up, so I'm gonna choose some of them. One might be a little easier, quicker to answer. It's from Kwame, who asks, have your books been made accessible for the blind? One of your many favored sons.
Oh, yes, I know, Kwame. We're getting there, Kwame. I need your help. You know, one of the things I am going to do is make the first book, Understanding Afrocentric Worldview. I'm doing an audio book. So I will be reading that text and you will be able to access it. The other two have not yet been, but I may do the same with them.
Yeah.
And Kwame, if you can help me with that, I'd appreciate it.
Beautiful. Okay, awesome. Another question is, let's see, Dr. Myers and or Dr. Queener, I want to share optimal psychology with the justice-involved population. Can you refer me to someone in Columbus, Ohio? And so maybe that's something you could, Dr. Queener, I don't know if you have access to the line in terms of Q&A, maybe you have something verbally, but you might be able to respond directly to Sean or Dr. Myers, any.
So I'm not sure. What is he asking, if there's someone here who could teach it?
They want to share optimal psychology with justice-involved population. So sounds like, how might they be able to get information about that?
Justice-involved populations, meaning incarcerated people, or meeting people who are in the criminal justice system as judges? Well, this long and short answer to that is, of course. If I can't do it, I will direct them to Dr. Queener, who has already set in place, as he suggested, the training, Belief Systems Analysis Institute. And we'll just need to know more. So you can email me at myers.19, myers.19 @osu.edu, so I can know more specifically about what you're interested in, and I will pass it on.
Yeah. So, and just to confirm, justice involved, meaning incarcerated folks, right, returning citizens, but the invitation is for Sean to email you directly and you can help out with that.
You know, if in that being the case, I do have to share this. When I first developed optimal theory, the first place I went was to prisons, to incarcerated Black men who had violence and chemical dependency. And that's when I knew, oh my God, they got this. And so that's a population who really benefits, because they understand about being played, which is what's happened to us as Black people, or any people in this society who are not in control of their definition of reality. They also understood that spiritual aspect. So that's a good population to work with.
Beautiful. All right, a few more questions. We still have about 7 minutes. We're going to try to make sure we end on time. But one is from Sharon, who says, Dr. Myers, your recognition that doctoral holders are resistant to coercion of the present regimes. Can you say more about this?
Yes, I was just speaking to the fact that our mainstream media is suppressing certain knowledge and certain points of view that don't seem to support this idea of vaccinations for everyone. And they're making it appear as though it's poor people, it's Black people, it's Republicans, it's everybody. But in actuality, at least according to the Carnegie Mellon and University of Pitt survey, and it was a big survey, like online, maybe at least 1 million people. The group most likely to resist getting vaccinated and persist in that resistance are people with PhDs who do research. So we don't know why they're the most resistant, but on its face, I'm just speculating that one characteristic of anybody who has a PhD, one thing they do and know how to do is to do their own research and find answers to questions and hopefully think for themselves.
Yes, yes, yes. So I'm gonna maybe propose that we get through 1, maybe 2 remaining questions. I know and realize there may be more. But as you know, we want to honor everyone's time, including Nana Linda's. But a request has been made that maybe you can close us in a prayer as well. So let me get one more question out, maybe two, and then we can close. I believe Nana Linda would be open to receiving email communication with folks who may want to continue to dialogue with you about what you do. And then I, of course, need to make sure I plug Zola Up Mondays, right, where they can, on a regular basis, have access to you and others, some of whom are present tonight, but to learn more, right?
Yes, absolutely. Join us on Creating Zola Mondays. We have a conversation the first and third Monday at noon on Facebook Live and Instagram, and it's always a good conversation. 2 weeks ago, we had Julius Garvey, the son of Marcus Garvey. That was so exciting. So be sure to listen in, and it's a cross-generational conversation. That's what really makes it exciting, because it's not just elders talking to elders or young people talking to young people. We're having a conversation among us.
I see one of your co-presenters, Evan August, is here. All right, last question that we're going to just go through as a group, as a collective. And it's, what advice do you have for us who find ourselves practicing belief systems analysis with those who embody the suboptimal and don't necessarily seek to change it?
Well, you know, one of the things we have to admit is power is the ability to define reality. And all of us have exactly the same amount of power. Sometimes some of us give our power up when we shouldn't, and sometimes we don't give it up when we should. So I'm really committed to the divination of the 78th Odu that says, when all the good is found, then we can go to heaven. And it says, those that want to go, let them go. Those that want to stay, let them stay. You can't change people's mind. Basically, your only charge is to lay the truth out there as best you know it. And then they get to choose. And if they have questions, or you can support them or share more knowledge, always be willing to do that. But there's nothing you can do to make someone change the way they think and feel when they have been committed to that fragmented, suboptimal way of thinking. And I have to say, you know, that fragmented, suboptimal view has been so successful because materialism is very seductive. Yeah. And if you don't know any other way of being in the world, and you're looking at the fine car, the job, position, the income, then that can be very seductive. But that's probably because you don't know the peace, the joy, the love, the sustainable well-being that's possible when you let that go.
That's right. Well, that sounds like a nice way to close this aspect of the presentation. I don't know if Dr. Sharon, you have some closing comments, but I know I, again, would like to invite Nana Linda to close with some prayer affirmations for us. So however you want to close it out, but thank you, everybody.
Well, I would definitely have Nana Linda close it. I just want to thank everyone for coming this evening. And it has been an honor to pay this homage to you, Nana Linda, Dr. Linda James Myers. That name will always be in my mind. As many of you have said on this panel, I read your first article in the Reginald Jones's book. So I'm definitely aware of it, and your book and everything else that's contributed so much to African-centered psychology. And thank you to all of our panelists, Dr. Speet, Dr. Higgins, Dr. Daterville, Dr. Queener, Dr. Zetu. And Dr. Zetu, I'd like for you just to say your name just one time, because I can't pronounce it, so everybody can know what it is. Because, yes, if you don't mind.
It's Gagata.
There you go, everybody. So from the continent itself, that's what I have to say about that. And thank you so much. And this has been such a wonderful evening. And Nana Linda, if you can just close us out before we say goodnight to our guests.
Sure. I first of all wanted to say thank you for each and every one of the panelists who participated, particularly Zetsu, who is early morning South African time. I so appreciate you getting up. And I'll have to talk to you about the ancestors' time. It's interesting. I wonder if it's the same time that we talk about here. I bet it is. Dr. Queener, thank you so much for all that you've done and all that you do. Dr. Hagens, Dr. Spite, I just really, really adore you. Your contributions have been great. Dr. Adiba, I'm just so impressed that you left the business world where they say the money is and come to psychology where we really need the help. So each in your own way is unique, special, and make tremendous contributions to the greater good of the whole. And so what I'd like to do is to close out with a tribute to each and every one of you, as well as each and every one who's on the call, and say, may the ancestral spirits, that creative life force, that divine spirit being that we are, manifest to our greatest and highest good, that our souls may be illuminated, uplifted, healed, that love, peace, joy, and happiness that all humanity so desperately needs, along with the knowledge, wisdom, and understanding, let it be ours. And so we say, Ashe, Ashe, Asheo.
Sheo.
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 Beautiful. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. And again, thank you to ABSI for co-sponsoring this event with the Center for Black Studies Research at UC Santa Barbara. Good night, all.
Good night.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, thank you.